The first artist I will critique is Caspar David Friedrich, a 19th century artist of which I experienced at the Staatliche Museen Berlin online gallery. He was born in what is now Greifswald, Germany on September 5, 1774, as the sixth of 10 children born into a religious home. At an early age, Friedrich would become familiar with loss and tragedy as the death of his mother and two sisters marked his childhood. His early teenage years would once again be marked by tragedy as the death of his brother occurred while rescuing Friedrich from a crack in the ice. As a young adult, Friedrich began to show talent in drawing and became a private student of John Gottfried Quistrup. Quistrup's method involved the study of nature and poetry. These aspects would become a lasting theme in Friedrich's work. Friedrich later enrolled at the Copenhagen Academy, where he began to refine his deep interest with nature and vast landscapes. His connection and experimentation with spirituality and mysticism would also fertilize the ground that would solidify his place as the leader in German Romanticism. Friedrich's career took place at a time when the disillusionment of materialistic society swept across Europe. This gave room for his art as a growing appreciation for spirituality and Romanticism was underway. Friedrich's works often featured figures in deep contemplation, outlined against a grand natural scenery. His work focused on the feeling of the human presence diminished in the midst of an expansive setting. Such characteristics dealt with the sense of being and existing within a finite space and time in an ever-expanding reality. Friedrich's work titled Monk by the Sea is a fine example of how Friedrich depicts the existentialism of humanity in the face of a vast reality. The compositional lines divide this image into land, sea, and sky, but at a closer look at the strokes of each section makes it difficult to clearly define where one starts and the other ends. Much like life, Friedrich suggests the existence of guiding principles and limits, but blurs the lines of their true existence. The color palette in this piece is also very muddy and cold. While both the sky and ground are reminiscent of the natural world, sandwiched in the middle is a void-like depiction of the sea and horizon line. Dark blue greens shade the sea while dirty grays form the horizon. The struggle between these two forms and colors create an unwelcoming abyss just under the center of the image and right above the small figure. Friedrich often employed such metaphysical tension in order to reflect the struggle that is existence in both the subjects of his art and humans as subjects of life. The light in this image is absent, yet all-encompassing. It seems to be coming from somewhere, but its source remains unknown. In a practical sense, it's likely directly above, as it produces no shadows and is being diffused by the clouds and gloom. But by the time the light reaches the abyss at the center of the image, there is not enough to clearly illuminate both the void and the subject. As Friedrich leans on his spirituality, it's as if he depicts light from the heavens in contention with the perilous void at the center of this existential moment. While it prevails, the light is not a sufficient answer for the remaining darkness. The second artist I will critique is Edvard Munch, an artist stemming from both the 19th and 20th century, of which I experienced through the Met Online Gallery. He was born in 1862 in a farm village located in Lawton, Norway. His Christian family included 3 sisters and 1 brother along with his father and mother. Like Friedrich, Munch would also become familiar with loss and tragedy. At 5 years old, he would lose both his mother and sister to tuberculosis. His family would then go on to move frequently as his father had a medical career in the military. Munch's father also had severe mental illness that caused Munch to fear the same outcome. As a young adult, Munch began to experiment with art and philosophy. Munch was intrigued by the writings of anarchist philosopher Hans Jaeger. His interest culminated in his joining of Jaeger's group titled Christiane Bohème, where he would develop a close relationship with Jaeger. In fact, Jaeger became Munch's greatest early supporter and influenced him to draw from personal experience. This was a turning point for Munch, as his art began to contemplate the pain of life's traumas and the mental anguish of the reality he had experienced. Munch's career took place at a time where Impressionism and Post-Impressionism were at the forefront. While the subject of such art was often airy and embraced modernity, Munch experimented with the contemplations of death and loss. His art grew notoriety as it was different and dealt with the visceral aspects of life. After his father's death, Munch would begin to grow interest in spirituality and symbolism. The painting I Will Critique is often noted as a point where Munch began to combine his early themes with the pondering of spirituality and meaning. Munch's work titled Night in St. Cloud is a prime example of how Munch reflects the pain of loss with the loneliness of life. While the lines defining the window separate the outside from the inside, the lines that create the inside are less exact. As if they are stumbling over the other, there is no clear definition. The subject fades into the background as a faint silhouette lost in the dark struggle of their turmoil. The color palette in this image is also very dark and drabby. While the colors reflect a night setting, they also reflect the darkness of the moment. Instead of creating a serene evening, the dark colors form an abyss within the room. The abyss consumes the silhouette as he becomes part of the darkness. This reflects Munch's understanding that people often succumb to the darkness of life's travesties. As the silhouette peers out the window, they cannot help but be consumed by the darkness of the situation. The light in this image is faint and coming through the window. As if peering into an alternate reality brighter than one's own, the light source is still quite dim. Like Friedrich, Munch's experience with spirituality draws him towards something deeper and meaningful. Yet in this image, the light on the other side of the window remains, and while it might be brighter outside than inside, it is not bright enough to overpower the smaller lights far off in the distance. These two works, Monk by the Sea and Night in St. Cloud, express the internal turmoil of contemplating life and its difficulties. Whether a person is prisoner to darkness or actively facing the void, there is no escaping the vastness of what it means to exist. Whether it be pain, suffering, or happiness, existing in any moment is a trial on its own. Both pieces reveal the turmoil people face as they exist as finite humans in an expanding world, continuing to bestow experiences upon us.